When you hear the word startup, what comes to mind? Well, personally, I imagine ambitious founders in garages building revolutionary products, getting funded millions of dollars, hiring hundreds of people, and building massive offices. I imagine the CEO becoming a billionaire and starting to fight other billionaires in jujitsu. Do startups really function like this? Well, today, when you create your own company, you face a decision. Do you follow the road embraced by most entrepreneurs seeking external funding through venture capital or even angel investors? Or do you take the road less traveled, the one embraced by those rejecting this venture capital and following what I call the anti startup movement? Well, today we live in a world dominated by this capitalist system that fully embraces venture capital. Venture capital firms, VC, operate by injecting millions of dollars into early stage companies in exchange for equity. They support them financially and strategically, pushing them to scale. They do this because the more the company grows, the more the investor makes money. Historically, VCs have been the birthplace of truly innovative technologies. Companies like Google, Microsoft, eBay, and even Tesla were all venture backed. But this industry has grown exponentially. It has also become increasingly greedy and distrustful. It is now dominated by a couple dozen firms, which collectively control over $900 billion. Today, this industry has an obsession with profit over purpose, where VC-baked companies are often expected to prioritize growth at all costs, even when it isn't sustainable. And in the pursuit of such growth, companies will often abandon their core values and neglect the well-being of employees and even customers. Furthermore, a Gallup study has shown that 90% of all venture-backed companies will eventually fail and file for bankruptcy. A notorious example of this practice would be WeWork. We've all heard of this company, seen their buildings, or maybe worked in one of their offices before. Well, if you haven't heard already, they went bankrupt in September of last year. But how did this come to happen? Well, it's all because of its venture-backed nature. WeWork's investors' goal was to open as many locations as possible and set the lowest rates to attract as many customers. And for years, this seemed to work, as they had a staggering valuation of $47 billion in early 2019. But this was strange, because on average, they were losing $8 million a month, and they just kept opening locations. But this all went and when they realized that they had no more investor money to continue. And from 2019 on out, they started closing location after location till in September of 2023, they filed for bankruptcy. Like in many other cases, their failure was caused by the astronomical expectations of investors. Well, there's a new generation of entrepreneurs who are rejecting this distorted vision of business and instead embracing a philosophy often referred to as the anti-startup movement. This movement doesn't focus on massive returns, but rather on building fundamentally strong business models that will be able to stay afloat for years to come. Think of your company as a skyscraper, where if you choose to build it quickly with easy-to-find materials and with a crew that's never worked before together, you'll end up with something looking like this. But if you choose to take your time to find the right material and to build a strong team that values community, you'll end up with something looking more like this. So these companies will follow the three guiding principles: ownership, purpose, and community. The main idea behind this movement is to avoid any form of external funding and to essentially bootstrap your company. Now, in hindsight, this doesn't seem reasonable because you risk your own time and your own capital, but you aren't restrained by the expectations of investors. And this freedom allows entrepreneurs to build their companies at a manageable, more sustainable pace. A study from the Harvard Business Review has shown that 50% of all bootstrap companies eventually reach profitability within the first year, while only 10% of venture-backed do so. Purpose. Another key aspect of these startups is purpose. Often today, we see large companies getting caught up in their product selection because they focus on creating products that appeal to the masses, that appeal to everyone. And doing so often leads to mediocre results. Anti-startups, on the other hand, focus on building solutions, addressing specific problems, ensuring quality over quantity, and a good product market fit. Craigslist is a really good example of this. Much of the website's success can be attributed to the founder Craig Newmark's vision of a simple yet straightforward web page. Indeed, to this day, the website has stayed almost entirely the same since its release in 1995. The only difference is that today, Craigslist pulls in a whopping $1 billion annually. This is the power of keeping things simple and clean. $1 billion a year, and yet it's still just Craigslist. Now, let's look at the community aspect. Stuart Chessman, a writer for the HR Director, highlighted in a paper earlier this year, it's striking how the majority of the world's workforce feels unappreciated, without a voice, powerless to influence change in their organizations. Anti-startups, on the other hand, challenge this stereotype by embracing the community they build. Founders create environments where employees feel valued and motivated under a shared purpose. Research from the Harvard Business Review has showed that companies prioritizing trust and transparency are 4.5 times more likely to retain top talent, but also experience a 50% boost in productivity. And so what I'm building here is that it's no longer about building the next Apple or Google, but rather on building solutions built around purposeful growth, solving meaningful problems, and staying true to your mission, but also on fostering strong, healthy communities. As this new wave of entrepreneurs takes a lead, we must ask ourselves, are we ready to embrace this shift and reshape the future of business altogether? Thank you for listening. For your time.